I'm Parth Gupta. I'm the co-executive director of West Windsor Forward. Today I'm joined by Ajay Tomar and Andrew Winters, who are both candidates for council in West Windsor. Today is October 19th, and this is an interview that is part of our West Windsor Forward 2025 election interview series. We're going to start with a 2-minute joint opening statement, so you can begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, I can start. So thank you, Parth and Darshan, for organizing this. I'm really proud of both of you young men to do this, and I can see the great potential that you have in this. I wish there are more young men like you who are participating in this kind of activities and promoting civic service. So that being said, Ajay Tomar, I'm running for town council here in West Windsor. I have been living in West Windsor for the last 18 plus years. I raised my family. My son went through the high school and total schooling from here. This township has given me tremendous amount of opportunity and benefits at personal and professional level. And I'm going to now thinking of giving it back to the community with my civic service.
Yep. Hi, my name is Andrew Winters. I'm also running for council. I moved here, I'm the newcomer. I moved here about 1.5 years ago, specifically for the school district, the Mandarin program. Being a newcomer, I have a lot of outside views from other townships on what they do well. And so I think leveraging that capability is going to bring fresh ideas and new opportunities for our community here. And I think it's a building block. And I just want to echo as well what Ajay said about the two of you. It's wonderful that you're doing this and giving us the time to speak.
How would you describe the role of a council member in West Windsor's mayor-council form of government? What does this position mean to you personally, and why do you believe you're the best qualified candidates to serve on the council? You have 1 minute, 30 seconds each, and we'll start with Mr. Winters.
Yeah, so from a council perspective, I think the core duties are being a fiduciary to the town, spending and appropriation of our capital to make sure that we can continue to move this town forward and make sure it runs. I think additionally, though, we have an opportunity to play a wider role in trying to support the township and the goals of what the township should achieve. That is partially of reaching out to other townships, understanding what they excel at, and seeing what we can bring from these townships into our township. I think it's also important that we enable the ability to market ourselves. And as kind of the representatives of the community, we go out there and make sure that our township is being properly represented and properly receiving the recognition that it gets from not only our assembly, but our Senate and our governor, and making sure that that all fits into the ideals of what the community wants here. Why do I think I would be a good candidate? So I have a corporate strategy background, so I love solving challenging problems, and I love to try and always make things better. The status quo should never be good enough. You should always achieve for more. And I think that will lend into trying to make this town go from a really great town to an even more excellent town.
Okay, so what was the question? So anyways, the question was, what's the role of council and why I'm qualified for it? So the role of a council person is to, like what Andrew was saying, was to be the guardians of how the township is run by the executive team, which is mayor and the rest of the council operations. We want to make sure that we are holding them accountable and how we are spending and appropriating our budget towards serving the community. So that's the core responsibility of a council person. That being said, it is such a civic service duty that you can make whatever you want to make. My own personal goal is to be a partner with the township operations and with the mayor to ensure that we can take this town from where it is today to in a very better place, in a different direction. Improving the operations, making sure that our budget is our tax dollars are being spent on appropriate things. Now, why am I qualified for this? Is I have spent 30 years in corporate, in different functions, as well as I've been helping to run a nonprofit for the last 15 years, which has impacted more than 2,000 kids, underprivileged kids, to remain in schools. So that makes me a really qualified person to do this job well and take our town forward in a different direction than it is.
Looking back at the last 4 years, how would you assess the township's direction? What letter grade would you give to the current administration's performance? Are there any specific successes or missteps that justify that grade? We'll start with Mr. Tomar, 30 seconds each.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this question back to our constituents. Do you feel our town is better off today than it was 4 years back? Now, let me tell you this. We have one of the worst roads probably in the Mercer County, entire county. We are building warehouses versus building the businesses which bring right kind of jobs and keep open spaces. We are not going to do that. We are going to take this town and take it in a different direction. I don't think I can point to one single success in last 4 years. All I have seen is more building, inappropriate building, and building something which is not right for our town, and under investing in the infrastructure. Those are the accomplishment of last 4 years, in my opinion.
And again, being the newcomer, I actually started looking at this community in 2021, and it took quite a while to actually get a home and move down here. But I grew up in a small town, so I understand kind of the feel and the community of what a small town is. And I find that there's a lot of things here that could be better and could facilitate stronger connections within the community and help bridge the gaps that we have in our communities that are localized. And I think those are important aspects.
In West Windsor's government, the council serves as a check and balance on the mayor's administration. Can you describe your philosophy on this relationship and when, if ever, you would vote against a proposal from a mayor? 1 minute each, starting with Mr. Winters.
Yeah, so I think it's important to coordinate and work with the mayor. It needs to be a collaborative approach, but it needs to be like any other stakeholder relationship. You need to make sure that you're representing the people and the residents that have voted you in, and you're not sacrificing their views or the opinions of the community to appease a mayor. So I think it's really important to take that into consideration when you're voting against something. And I think you need to be empowered to have a voice and to be able to vote against the mayor on something that you think is not appropriate. And so looking at how that plays in, again, just like the mayor should have strong relationships with Mercer County, the assembly people, anyone directly related to our area, it's just as important for us to have that relationship with the mayor.
Yeah, so I think it's important to have a good relationship with not only with mayor, but the other council members as well, all township staff, whether it's the chief of police or chief of fire and other department heads. However, a council person is not supposed to be rubber stamping whatever mayor is asking him or her to do. A council person is elected by the community. He or she is getting votes and representing the voters and community as an independent voice who is going to keep the mayor and the township running in a way that community expect them to. That's why they are voted for. So I'm not going to be beholden to anything from mayor's perspective. I'm going to have my own independent voice in the township. I'm going to collaborate with everybody, but I'm going to make sure that my values or my votes or my work is representing what community has expected out of me when they voted for me.
Residents want to know how you'll address their concerns. What concerns / improvements would you prioritize in your first 100 days in office? What do you hope residents will be able to say you have done by April of next year? Starting with Mr. Tomar, 1 minute each.
Sure. So I have had a great opportunity to knock on so many doors in last 2.5 months, and so many residents have opened their door for us to go and come talk to them. And there are several things which come up over and over again. Number one is poor infrastructure, which is roads, sidewalks, street lights, crosswalks. That is one thing that comes up over and over again, as well as the road safety, which is quite important to everybody, because given how many accidents we have had. And the third thing that comes again and again is warehouses. So 3 month time, which you are asking us to what we're going to deliver, I think the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to make sure that we put the flashing beacons in the crosswalks wherever we need it. We have identified like 5 to 6 areas where we should do it immediately. That's going to be the first thing. The second thing is we're going to try to bring a civic app as soon as we can. So those are the two things I think we can do in first 3 months.
Yeah, and echoing the civic app, I think is something that's sorely needed. Over 25% of municipalities in New Jersey have a civic app, and what that means is it's a way to interact with the municipality. So again, an example of we're in deer season, so roadkill. You can take a picture of the roadkill, it geolocates it, and it will send a ticket to the municipality, which can then track it and go pick it up and then inform the resident that submitted it that this has been resolved. So I think that is definitely something that's a priority. I think the other priority is also looking at how we go about our township in a direction. And by that I mean Vision Zero is from a pedestrian safety standpoint. When we talk about infrastructure, it's not just infrastructure, it's also laying a framework. And Vision Zero is that framework that's been successfully implemented in Hoboken and a lot of other communities here. Mercer County is currently in the process of implementing it. So I don't know why it's something that we couldn't do, and it's something that would be passed by resolution.
Looking long term now, residents are looking for a leader that will make meaningful, proactive improvements to our town. What are your long-term goals for the township, and what does success look like under your leadership for the residents of West Windsor 2 and 4 years from now? 1 minute each, starting from Mr. Winter.
Yeah, so I look at our township now, and I've used the analogy that where we are as a town seems like we're putting Band-Aids over our symptoms instead of treating the root cause. And I think the warehouse is an example of that. The new residential complexes that we're building to meet our affordable housing is another symptom of that. Affordable housing is really important, but I don't think we've exhausted all the ways to go about building it. Newark just approved a new building complex that's going to be 100% affordable housing, and they have developers already knocking to do that. Why can't we do something similar? Why is it always, we're going to build 250 affordable housing units, but that's going to equal 1,000 new homes? So I think there's a balance of sustainable development and making sure that the community gets value out of new construction and new builds that go on, and that they fit within the community. And I think the direction that we're going right now, the builds that are going on don't fit the aesthetics of the community.
So just add to what Andrew was saying. Our goal is that in next 2 to 4 years, or in this term, we can materially improve our infrastructure. So we can say we improved our road materially. What it means is that wherever we see the poor conditions today, we don't see it anymore. We have improved the way we go about developing new projects. Right now, the lot of projects, especially the apartment complex and warehouses that are being built, are built without any thought process in terms of how those things are going to impact the infrastructure. We have to bring a thoughtful planning into the mix before we go about it. It's less visible, but it is necessary for long-term success of our town to make sure that any new project that is coming up and that's going to be built, it's built in a way that infrastructure surrounding that project can support it, unlike just putting it there and not having a thought about how the infrastructure is going to hold up to that development.
The most controversial topic in West Windsor recently has been the topic of warehouses, spurred by a boom in online shopping and development obligations. We wanted to get your brief recap of the timeline of the Howard Hughes site specifically and how we got to the current stage that we're in now. 7 warehouses approved by the Township, awaiting county and state approval. This is just a brief recap. We'll have other questions on this topic later. We'll start with Mr. Tomar, 30 seconds each.
Yeah, so this particular area, it's a 650 acres of land that has been zoned now by planning board. It has been zoned for commercial, and planning board has approved building of seven warehouses, which equals to 5.5 million square feet of warehouse capacity, which is totally inappropriate for a town like ours. We can't support that kind of traffic it's going to put on our roads. So that is something we have to figure out what else we can do working with Bridgepoint 8 if we are elected. Our approach to that is, these warehouses don't belong in our town. We are going to find a way to work with Bridgepoint 8 to do something else other than the warehouse. We have several ideas. Those ideas will be shared as you go on in the question on this topic.
And I agree that the warehouses don't fit the community. We're not a community of warehouses. We're a community that's been thoughtfully planned over many, many years and needs to continue having a long-term framework of what our community is going to look like in the future, which I think is sorely missing with the developments that have occurred in the last 4 to 6 years here. I also don't believe that we're going to get the expected revenue and the benefits from the warehouses, because if you do comparables around the space, the value and revenue that they bring in from a tax perspective when you include the pilot program is about $1, which is very low from a revenue standpoint from a commercial building.
Considering that West Windsor residents move about the region and not just the township, how would your administration plan to address the community's concerns, both in West Windsor and our surrounding towns, about the Bridgepoint 8 project, considering potential negative impacts on traffic, infrastructure, and quality of life, and potential positive impacts like rateables? How can residents independently verify the data on things like rateables and traffic? 1 minute each, starting with Mr. Winters.
Yeah, so as I left off previously, rateables are important. And if you look at the surrounding communities and what those warehouses, distribution center warehouses typically bring in is about $1 per square foot. Now, you can get to higher rateables, but it requires capital improvements within the warehouse. So if you think like pharmaceutical, medical, high tech, those would bring in a much higher rateable, maybe towards the $3, and that would get you to the numbers. The issue is there's not many of them out there. And if you get in a distribution center like Amazon, it's not just the semi-trucks that are going to be coming in. You're going to have localized box trucks that are delivering. You're going to have delivery vans. You're going to have people coming and going from working there. That is all going to add a whole bunch of additional traffic into our community beyond just the semi-trucks that everyone talks about. And I'll let Ajay finish.
Yeah, so this warehouse complex, 7 of them, are going to have 900 plus docks, where 18-wheelers are going to be loaded and unloaded. You multiply 900 by a couple of hours per truck to get loaded and unloaded, you do the math. How many in 24 hours you're going to get? You're going to get tens of thousands of those trucks coming into those warehouses on daily basis. So just imagine, as a resident of this community, and its surrounding area, you get 10,000 more trucks coming in and spewing all that smoke and all that noise that's going to come with it. It's going to create tremendous amount of pollution in our area. Plus, if you cement that 650 acres of land, it's going to create flooding in flood-prone areas within West Windsor. Forget about other towns. In the West Windsor, we're going to have really bad flooding problems because of these warehouses. So it's, again, like I said, it is not for our town. This is totally inappropriate development for our town.
The warehouse issue is largely a zoning one, and the council is responsible for all zoning ordinances. What specific changes, if any, would you propose to West Windsor's zoning code or master plan? 1 minute each, starting with Mr. Tomar.
Yes, so zoning, like again, when I started, what I said was any new development that needs to happen because the land is owned by a private developer has to be zoned in a way that it represents the way we want our town to be. And our town has to be a suburban town. We don't want to build too much into our town. So we're going to look at zoning from the point of view of what kind of development this developer is planning to bring, and take a look at it from the value perspective. Does it align with the value of our town from suburban perspective? Does it align from the value of our town from the value it's going to deliver from rateable perspective? And can we support with infrastructure with that type of development? So those are the three things we are going to look at any new zoning before it goes through the council.
And to continue on that, if we look at longer term, I think we need to have a thoughtful plan longer term on how we facilitate our zoning and how we want to plan for that going forward. Because it's not, again, our vision is not something that we want to fix tomorrow. We need to have a long-term vision of what we want this community to look like 5, 10, 15 years from now. And I have young children here, and I want this to be a place that they want to stay and they want to come back to. And so I think it's very, very important to start to lay out long-term plans on what it should look like and how we should look at it. And I think we can't be afraid to be bold in this regard and really try to find ways to work with the builders and the developers to get what values the community wants. And we keep going, it's a community first municipality, a community first view that we have when we're looking at all of the aspects of how we're going to govern. And I think that's important to incorporate into our zoning.
As you know, property taxes are top of mind for most residents. What is your specific plan for the municipal portion of the tax rate? And how would you fund services and infrastructure improvements with or without raising it? 1 minute, 30 seconds each, starting with Mr. Winters.
Yeah, I find it interesting that we always get stuck on municipality taxes because it's a small portion of our total tax. And we don't have control over the other taxes. But the decisions that the mayor and the council makes does indirectly impact school board taxes. For example, building a bunch of new residential complexes could put additional pressure, which requires additional schools, which is going to raise the school board. And so one of the areas that we actually talk about holistically is it's a balancing act that we can help support school board and how they fund the schools. How can we keep families that have had their children go through the education system stay in West Windsor to offset new residential that's getting built and new families moving in, so that it's not necessarily about controlling or influencing school board taxes, but it's about creating an equation and an ecosystem that allows stability in the tax base across the board. And from a municipality perspective, we have money, right? There is a fund balance and there's an increasing in that. And I think it's important to look at what's being appropriated and what's being spent and ensuring that what the council is actually designing in their budget is getting executed. Because I think if you can execute on those plans, you're going to be able to make the improvements. And another last closing remark on that is there's a lot of money out there as well. Grants, for example, that we've seen other communities take advantage of. Why aren't we necessarily hitting grants very hard? Because we can bring additional revenue or additional money in to support objectives that we want to achieve without having to increase our tax base.
Sure. So just to go back to the overall tax. So in municipality, it only takes in 14% of the total tax, that 14 to 15% that total tax on a resident today. Now, how do you keep it stable, that it doesn't go up, is by not putting more residents into our town, by building these big, giant apartment complexes, because they're going to put more pressure on our infrastructure. We have to build new roads and sidewalks and other things. That's one. The other thing is that you have to make sure that we can bring additional revenue, which comes from not from residential, but it comes from mixed use kind of communities. Some commercial, some office spaces, some restaurant or recreational activities type of revenue. So you have to kind of find other source of revenues to make sure that we are not putting pressure on the residential tax base. That's how you keep it. You have to, like Andrew was saying, you have to be balanced in terms of how do you develop your town. Now, what it's 14% that we control, but we influence the more. Within the 14%, we still have to make investment and make sure that the overall value delivered by the municipality is perceived by the residents like we are getting bang for our buck. And that comes with additional services that we have to offer to our residents.
Looking back at the most recent municipal budget that the council voted on, what is one specific addition you would have advocated for and one specific reduction you would have proposed and why? 1 minute, 30 seconds each, starting with Mr. Tomar.
Yes, so this is an interesting question. So our budget is about $54 million in total. Big portion of that budget goes to paying salaries and maintaining the equipment. So, and then there is a bucket where you have the capital improvement projects. Now, the problem with today we have in our budget is it is so opaque. I can't figure out in our budget what project has been appropriated, what has been appropriated project, how much it has been completed, where the money is. So there is a complete ambiguity in terms of how Township is spending my tax dollars. Okay, so you are asking a specific question to me that which budget item you are going to cut and which budget item you're going to invest more in. My problem is I can't figure out in our budget which investment are being made and where they are. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to change that. We're going to make sure anything that has been appropriated and has been planned for execution has a project plan, and that project plan is available on quarterly basis on our website and when we are elected in next few months, when we are in the office. So we're going to do that. Now, going back to your question about where you're going to make an investment. The investment we're going to make is in our roads, in our traffic safety. Those are the investment areas we are going to invest more in because current administration in last 8 years has done nothing to improve those. What we're going to cut? I don't know because I can't figure out how they are spending my tax dollars.
And continuing along that line on investments, because I think it's important because it differentiates the values that we're bringing. And when we look at what should be successful and what could be beneficial for the community, again, we go back to the civic app. It's not going to be a large lift to implement something like that. And so let's invest in that because it's going to potentially provide a ton of value for the residents, and it's going to have the ability to streamline some of our internal processes within the municipality. Another interesting topic that we've been in discussions with is composting. There is a ability to do composting and be kind of the leaders in New Jersey on composting along with garbage and recycling. So again, going back to recycling, that was done to help limit landfill usage. Composting is the next logical step, and it seems like New Jersey as a larger entity is going to start moving towards that. And so for a small amount of money, we could be the state leaders in how to facilitate this and implement it and start making a positive benefit on our local community and the way that landfills are being consumed because there's a limited amount. So those are two more specific tactical budget items that we could look at implementing that.
As West Windsor has rapidly grown in recent years, residents frequently talk about the condition of our roads and traffic congestion. What is your plan to systematically improve our roads and alleviate traffic hotspots? Starting with Mr. Winters, 30 seconds each.
Yeah, so traffic's an interesting one because we're somewhat limited by the growth that we've already developed. And the infrastructure is limited once that growth has been built around it. So if we look at the new residential complexes by the train tracks, that's going to add a ton of cars. And there's not necessarily an easy answer saying, Washington Road, we can expand this way, or we're going to put a different light on Route 1. So it becomes challenging. So it's looking at traffic easing, traffic optimization, those types of activities to try and make the traffic flow better is one of the ways that we can look at facilitating the reduction in traffic. And I think it's also important new development gets the opportunity to do traffic studies and understand, if we're building a large new complex, what's that going to do to the local infrastructure and the traffic, and how's that going to change the flow? Because it already takes a lot longer to get around town just because of the amount of vehicles.
Yeah, so like what Andrew was saying, there are certain areas where very limited opportunity to expand the roads. We are constrained by that. So we can't really make the roads wider to put more lanes in there. Now, what we're going to do is whatever is available to us in terms of fixing, repaving the roads and fixing the sidewalks, we are going to invest more from the fund balance that we have and the budget that we have and the grants that we're going to get from state or any other available grants to improve the overall conditions of our road, which is in really despair today. We have heavily underinvested in last 8 years. We are going to change that. That's going to be our first priority, is to make sure our roads are world class.
Another topic that comes up often is safety. There's a growing desire to make our town more walkable and bikeable, with organizations like the West Windsor Bicycle and Pedestrian Alliance leading the charge. How would you create a more connected and safer network for pedestrians and cyclists, and would you increase funding/efficiency for these projects? 1 minute each, starting with Mr. Tomar.
Yes, so I spent about an hour along with Andrew and Sujit with our PBA, board members, and they have tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise in this area. We are going to work with them to make sure that different communities are connected together. And how do you do that? Is you make sure that you have bike paths and you have the walkways which are safer, where you have flashing beacons or you have other ways of traffic calming measures, what Andrew was saying about the Vision Zero. So Vision Zero is going to be the framework which is going to allow us, when implemented, to make our roads safer so that people, our residents, feel safe to walk from one community to another community, from their community to the shopping complex. It requires a very thoughtful, long-term thinking, and Vision Zero provides that. It has been proven in other areas. Why can't we use it?
And just to hit on that again, I think the community had a chance to implement Vision Zero, and the current administration didn't seem too interested. And it's unfortunate because Vision Zero is the framework that enables for calmer streets, improved pedestrian safety, improved biking. It's been successfully implemented in many other communities in New Jersey, which has promoted improved conditions for walkability and also made it safer. Because New Jersey has a problem with pedestrian safety on the roadways, and it's not just in West Windsor, which we have a problem as well, and we should be doing everything in our power to make this community as safe as possible for people to go out and bike and walk and not feel scared to cross the road in the middle of the night. And I think it's a shame that we have that. And I think the other aspect that's important is we need to bridge communities together. And by implementing Vision Zero and connecting these communities, people will feel a better sense of belonging to not just their community, but the wider West Windsor, which is, I think, very important to consider.
Yeah, and just to add to before we switch this topic, because I'm really concerned about the infrastructure despair that we have had. And just to give you an example, how these current council and the mayor have looked at it, they have not invested enough. They are under-investing in our infrastructure for last many, many years. And as a result of that, we have this condition today. It would have not happened if they have made right kind of investment. And just to give you an example, one of my opponent who has been in council for last 20 plus years, in her questionnaire to Community News said, "Oh, I'm going to support more investment in our deteriorating roads." Well, where were you for last 20 years? Were you not on the council? Why didn't you invest more in last 8 years, 10 years to keep our roads safe and road in good conditions? We can't have that.
And just as a note, we are a little bit over time now, so just for the following questions, please try to keep your answers as succinct and meaningful as possible so we can balance the time back out.
Sure.
What is your assessment of our current public safety services, our police, fire, and EMS, and do they have the resources to keep our community safe? 30 seconds each, starting with Mr. Winters.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to many of our emergency responders, and we have a really great group of people supporting this community. And I think it's important to continue to work with them and make sure that they have the visibility and the resources that they need to protect our community and identify areas where there may be strengths and weaknesses, and not just in our community, but again, leveraging from the greater resources around us and making sure that our first responders can leverage those insights and make better use or better informed ways of managing our township.
Yeah, just to echo what Andrew was saying, we are very fortunate to have a very good police department and fire department, and they have done a really good job in keeping our town safe. Now there are some challenges with respect to the volunteer fire department. We have 2 volunteer firehouses. We want to make sure that we are working with them to ensure we have a good flow of volunteer firefighters coming in so that we can keep those firehouses running and make sure that we have next generation of people looking for being firefighters. We are promoting that and encouraging them.
You mentioned this earlier, but in the interest of transparency, would you support implementing a 311 style system or app for resident service requests such as potholes or broken township equipment to improve communication and efficiency? Starting with you, Mr. Tomar.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that has been on our campaign manifesto since day one we started this. We are probably 10 years behind on this implementation. I don't know where the current administration was on this, but that is the first thing we are going to implement.
Yeah, and to keep it short and sweet, I mean, we've already talked about that a few times, the Civic app, those types of application that will really provide benefit to the community is something that we wholeheartedly support, and I miss it. I used to use it all the time, so it would love it to be here as well.
The council is responsible for advice and consent on the mayor's appointments to boards like the zoning board. What criteria would you use to evaluate these appointments? 1 minute each, starting with Mr. Winters.
Yeah, so I think it's important as we look for appointments on how their ideals align with the community. We want to make sure that who we have appointed fits with the ideology and the desire of where the community wants to go. And I think in addition to that, we also need to look at their expertise. Similar as we're being looked at our expertise, we need to do the same for them and make sure that what they're able to bring to the table is the expertise that's needed for each role that they're going to fill. Or what their experience shows is that they can fill that role in a way that will provide added value and benefit. And there is a thought process of diversity of the mind and making sure that we capture that in some of these appointments as well.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew covered it really well. What I think we should do, and we are going to advocate to do it, is that mayor is picking up these board members from the community, which has tremendous amount of talent. So our advice to mayor would be pick people who are part of our community, who bring decades of experience in some of those areas which they have worked in private sector or in public sector for that matter, and use those synergies from our own community and from our own residents to do the good for our town, rather than picking something which mayor happens to like. So I'm going to be a very independent evaluator of what mayor is putting forward for these board members.
How would you handle a disagreement with a fellow council member? And are there any items where you deviate from your running mates? 2 minutes, 1 minute each, starting with Mr. Tomar.
Yes, so my approach, in whether it's in personal or professional life, is there are always common grounds that you can find to work with your fellow workers in any setting, or your friends or your family members. You have to look for common grounds. We have more common grounds with each other than we are not. So you have to look at from that point of view and be objective. We got to be objective, and the objective is at the end is that we are here in council to serve the community, to make sure that our town, which we are very proud of, remains in good hands. It is managed well. That's something we can continue to be proud of. Like, hey, we live and we run this town the best possible way we can.
And I'm just going to echo what he said and keep it sweet again is, we come from corporations. Our day-to-day lives is managing relationships and interrelationships on people that have competing ideologies of what they think is best for the companies that we work at. So leveraging our capabilities from that regard is something that we can definitely do and we will bring to council.
Residents, particularly young residents, are concerned about climate change and are wondering what our town can do to preserve open space and protect our environment. What is your vision for balancing the preservation of our beautiful open spaces with the enhancement of our parks and the promotion of environmental sustainability? Starting with Mr. Winters, 1 minute each.
Yeah, so I think, again, when we look at our community and what we have a ton of open space. But when you take away the county park, our open space shrinks significantly on what is actually part of West Windsor. So I think it's important that we look at funding that's available, we look at land trust grants that are available, and we look at when developers want to come and develop something, how can we offset the development with keeping preserved land or open space? And I think that's something that we really need to emphasize because, again, with the flooding, the climate change that's driving additional wild flooding in the area, we need to do steps to mitigate the challenges that we're going to face going forward. And we need to be proactive in planning contingencies on top of that, risk factors, to make sure that our community can stay safe. And it goes to, again, like composting, different things that we could be industry leaders on. We should start looking at implementing that because that has a wider impact than just our community.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew covered it quite well. Just to add a few things. Again, we will try to do as much as we can through grants and other sorts of funding so that we can keep the developable land which is available, probably buy it from the developers and make it open space. And the land which has been preserved, what can we do to reduce the carbon footprint of that land? Should we be planting corn in those spaces? Can we do something else which is more environmentally friendly? We have quite a bit of land which is preserved. Can we use some other type of, crops in there to promote more, environment friendly things rather than corn? So those are some of the ideas that I have. The other thing is, I'm going to go back to Bridgepoint 8. Bridgepoint 8 is 650 acres. And if we get a chance to redo that, we're going to keep good portion of it as open space because there is 60 acres which is a wetland. And if we pave that wetland, it's going to create more flooding problems for us.
What kind of development would you like to see in West Windsor? Which types of houses, restaurants, and businesses should residents expect to see, and how will you attract that type of development? 1 minute each, starting with Mr. Tomar.
Yes, so any new development that happens or approved in town going forward has to be aligned with how our infrastructure is going to support it. Whether it is houses or any commercial activity. That's number one. We got to be very careful about that. Number two, I'm very passionate about building new types of experiences in the town where people like you who are young and want to go to nice cafes or sandwich places. We want to promote those kind of venues so that we can keep the young people in the town. And C is going to be how do we keep our seniors an empty nester in the town so we create new kinds of services for them in using the different development opportunities that are available. So those are the areas where we're going to focus on the new development. Serve the community better from seniors and empty nesters perspective, and serve the community better for young people so that they can enjoy the life they want to enjoy today.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with everything that Ajay said, and we also have an opportunity we should have the ability to be the chief marketing officers that we like to say. It's not about just what can we do within our community, it's how can we promote our community to businesses and bring them in. How can we make a winery, for example, come here, and can we facilitate an easier way for them to open and again use some of the farmland that's preserved to bring them here. So I think we need to also, as council and mayor, promote West Windsor outside of our community to attract those type of businesses that young people and empty nesters and senior citizens would like.
Many residents share a vision for a more vibrant town center, a main street for West Windsor. Most see our downtown as 571 around the train station area, but hope to see further development as a walkable area with diverse local options. Do you believe this is a feasible goal, and if so, what is your plan to make it a reality? 1 minute each, starting with Mr. Winters.
Yeah, I would love that, right? I come from Hoboken. Hoboken's got a really vibrant downtown. It feels very connected. Where I grew up, they had a very vibrant downtown. Princeton has a really vibrant downtown, and it speaks to the character of the community. The question is can the infrastructure support it in that area? And I would love to have that, and I think that's something that needs to be pursued. And if it shows that that's not necessarily the prime location to do it, we definitely need to find other areas to implement that. Plainsboro has done a really good job with kind of creating that with some of their town centers and trying to create that vibe in their area. And so we do have frameworks that we can leverage to create something that would fit the community here and give, going back to the last question, give those capabilities and options for the community.
Yeah, I think town center is absolutely needed. Mm-hmm. Now, is Princeton Junction, after this recent, building these so many apartments there, is there enough space left to do that? So we have to make an assessment in terms of, is there enough buildable land or plots that are available to build something meaningful? B, build the infrastructure supported with the roads going to support that kind of development. So those are the two things that we have to assess first. We need a town center. Now, where do we build it? It has to make sense from surrounding perspective. But we will do whatever we build, it's going to be a very thoughtful step. It's not going to be putting, a restaurant here or putting a, apartment complex there and putting something here randomly. It's going to be very thoughtful so that we can sustain it for next 10 to 20, 30 years down the line.
Our library is a vital resource run by the county. However, many feel our library isn't a space modern, large, or centrally located enough to support students and our community. Do you have a vision for improving our local branch, perhaps by collaborating with the county or exploring a township-run model like Plainsboro's successful library/community center? 30 seconds each, starting with Mr. Tomar.
Answer is yes and yes. We have to work with county. We pay them quite a bit of taxes, and we should get return in from those taxes by improving a library. Other towns have done that. I don't know why our town hasn't done that. We're gonna work with our county counterparts and make sure that we are getting value from the taxes that we are paying to them. So yes, now building our own library, if we can find funding for that through philanthropy or some kind of grant, we will look to do that too. I agree with you. This library is not a very good library and doesn't serve our community well.
And just again to emphasize that, I think we need to look at how the other communities in Mercer County have been able to get funds appropriated to them, grant money appropriated to them, and philanthropic money given to them. And we need to follow a similar model so that we can benefit and create a better library for not just my children, but the community and anyone who wants to use it.
We have some closing questions now.
Yep.
In the spirit of a healthy debate and to clarify the choices for voters, if you could each ask one question to your opponents, what would it be? Starting with Mr. Winters.
My question would be, how are you going to be different from how you've been for the last 20 years? What are you going to do different all of a sudden that you haven't done the last 4 to 8 years or beyond? And so that would be really my question is, what's different? Why are you changing? What are you going to try and improve that you had the opportunity to have improved and didn't?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very similar question to our opponents is how can we trust them? You had this, you have been in the council for one of them has been in last 20 years and look at our town. If we feel like they have done a great job, well, fine, but I don't think they have done a great job. My question is, how can you trust somebody who has been in there 20 years and now claiming they're going to do more. Why have you not done it?
To end on a personal note, what is your single favorite thing about West Windsor?
It's with me?
Yeah.
I think my single favorite thing about West Windsor is that there is still a lot of open space that we have left. I can go out of my house and walk 3 miles in open area. I think that gives me tremendous amount of energy, and I value that a lot.
The community, the people. I've lived in many communities here in Michigan, and the people here are special. And I think that's what makes our community great. And when I look at our community, I think there is significant opportunities to bridge our somewhat isolated communities together and create a sense of belonging that's bigger than the neighborhood you live in. Because we have so many talented people, we have so many people that are so enthusiastic to be part of West Windsor, and we need to channel that, and we need to really work with them to make this place a much more connected and sense of belonging for not just senior citizens, but everyone. And so again, I'm the people.
What is your favorite restaurant in West Windsor?
Ooh, that is a good question. Honestly, the pizza place Captivino's over by across from on Clarksville Road. That's pretty close to my house. I get pizza from there a lot, and I really enjoy it.
I mean, let's be honest. We don't have a lot of fine dining places in West Windsor, but I do like First Walk. That's my go-to place for lunch, and I think they do a good job.
And finally, what does a perfect weekend spent entirely in West Windsor look like to you?
Oh, there are so many ways. I think we are very fortunate in West Windsor. We have a golf course. I like to play golf. I can finish my work at 5:30 in the evening and get 9 holes. I think that's tremendous.
And for me, I really enjoy going to the farmers market. I haven't been enough, but when I do go, I'm always very impressed by the offerings and the sense of community that you get out of there. Getting the vegetables and the food, going home, playing with neighborhood friends, and having, like I said, that sense of neighborhood connection, and allowing my kids to just enjoy nature. Again, coming from Hoboken, where it's much more challenging, this is a completely different dynamic for them, and that is just enjoying West Windsor in the open space and the community is what I really enjoy to do on the weekends.
And that concludes our interview. Thank you very much to both of the candidates for their time. And if anyone watching would like additional resources, they can find them at westwindsorforward.org.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great work again.
Yep.